I've never been the kind of man who looks for trouble, but it keeps finding me like a damn raccoon at a 4th of July cookout, persistent, sneaky, and never alone. Back in Pennsylvania, I lived quiet. Too quiet, maybe. My world fit into a 2-car garage behind a red brick ranch house just east of Pittsburgh. That garage held my most sacred possessions. A '46 Harley flathead, cherry black with brass bolts, purring like a smoker's last breath, and a German Luger my grandfather took off a surrendering officer in '45, still wrapped in the same handkerchief with a faint blood stain in the corner. I didn't need more than that. I was a man of oil stains, grocery lists, and mechanical absolutes. Then came Vegas. It was supposed to be a get-your-ass-out-of-your-rut trip with the boys. We hit the usual traps: the Bellagio fountains, poker at the Venetian, some greasy spoon that claimed to serve the best Reuben west of the Mississippi. Spoiler, it did not. But I wasn't there to gamble, I was there to forget. And that's when I met her. Melanie Carter. Mel. 5'4" of peroxide blonde and reckless decisions. You could hear her laugh before you saw her, and when you saw her, everything else in the room turned gray. She worked a stage at a dive called the Sugar Trap, just off Fremont. She wore sequins like armor and moved like she was trying to break the floorboards. I should have run. But there was something about her. Maybe it was the way she called me handsome without irony, or how she ordered whiskey like a trucker. We drank, we danced. We somehow ended up in one of those 24-hour wedding chapels with a cardboard Elvis and a Polaroid camera. It was a blur of neon and bad decisions, but the paper was real. Melanie Carter became Melanie Terrell in less time than it takes to rotate tires. Back in Pennsylvania, she moved in like a tornado with a perfume budget. My garage, once sacred ground, started smelling like cotton candy and tanning lotion. And I didn't hate it. For a while, it was good. She rode pillion on the flathead like she was born for it, threw barbecues in winter, and had this laugh that turned heads even at 50 miles an hour. We had sex on the hood of my Chevy Nova once. Hood was warm, she was warmer, but cracks show when the chrome wears off. She liked attention. Too much. Waiters, gas station clerks, the UPS guy. I swear she flirted with a Jehovah's Witness just to see if he'd blush. I told myself it was harmless. I told myself a lot of things. Then came the pigsty. Local bar. Real place. Has a fiberglass pig head mounted on the roof and serves a drink called the Hog Slammer. Vodka, Tabasco, and some unholy brown liquor that smells like wet leather. Mel loved it. Said it made her feel alive. I thought she meant the music, the dancing. Turned out she meant Ricky Bo Harlan. If testosterone had a mascot, it'd be this guy. Built like a fridge with arms, leather vest tight across a belly full of beer and old rage. Shoulder-length hair, beard down to his chest, tattoos like highway signs to places you don't want to go. I noticed how her voice got higher when she talked to him, how she touched her hair. Bo noticed, too. One night, I walked in from the bathroom to find them pressed close at the jukebox. I saw the way his hand lingered on her back. I didn't say anything, just watched. But I guess my face said it all, because next thing I know, he's walking over like a boulder with a bad attitude. "You her old man?" he asked, voice like gravel in a blender. I didn't flinch. "I'm her husband," he smirked. "Yeah, she said you might say that." That's when I swung. Not smart, not fast, just instinct. My fist landed somewhere between his chin and his beard. Felt like punching a sandbag full of concrete. He didn't even blink. What happened next wasn't a fight. It was a one-sided conversation between his fists and my face. I remember the smell of sawdust, the sound of glass breaking, someone yelling, "Jesus, Bo, he's done!" And then, black. I woke up in a hospital bed, wires taped to my chest, pain blooming like a firework behind my right eye. Arm in a sling, ribs wrapped, nose broken. My throat was dry, and the nurse who walked in smiled the kind of smile you give. A man who's both pitiful and inconvenient. She said, "Your wife said you fell." Right, Mel didn't visit. Bo didn't either. But I did get visitors, two uniforms who asked polite questions about a bar altercation. I played dumb, not hard. My head felt like mashed potatoes. The nurse upped my meds. I let her, until I didn't. A week passed, then two. I started pretending to take the pills, spitting them into tissues, started feeling less foggy. I couldn't move much. My right arm was useless, and even turning in bed made me grunt like a hog. But my ears worked just fine. That's how I knew they were still in my house. Mel's laugh. Bo's boots, the sound of my flathead's ignition, barely muffled through the window. Every night around 11 I'd hear them, her breathy moans, his grunt like a bear in heat. My house, my bed, and I lay there, soaked in fluorescent light and regret, listening to my life burn down one moan at a time. They thought I was done. They thought I was finished. But I wasn't. Not yet. There's something humbling about being bathed by a stranger while your wife moans through the drywall with another man. The nurses thought I was numb from the morphine. They were half right. The pills turned my bones into pudding, my thoughts into soup. But I was starting to wake up, bit by bit, like an old diesel engine coughing itself back to life. And I didn't like what I was seeing. Bo was wearing my boots. The Harley boots with the custom brass buckles. I'd had them resoled 3 times because they just felt right. You know how a good boot feels when it breaks in like a handshake? Yeah, he was stomping around in those. My credit card statements started showing up too. One charge for a tattoo parlor, another for a hotel room, downtown even though they were living in my damn house. I guess the thrill needed scenery. They weren't even subtle. Mel visited once, brought soup in a pink thermos, and kissed me on the cheek like I was her grandfather. I asked her about the Harley. She said, "Bo's just keeping it running, baby. You always said not to let the carbs get sticky." She smiled. I smiled back, and that's when I stopped taking the meds. I palmed the pills, flushed them, and started, forcing movement back into my legs. The right arm wasn't coming back. Nerves were shot, maybe forever, but I still had my left. I started doing small things, walking the hallway, timing the nurse rotations, sneaking out of bed at night just to remind my legs who was in charge. The world got clearer fast, clearer and uglier. I pieced things together from overheard calls and Mel's careless muttering. They were planning a trip. Not just a trip, a rally. The Hershey Thunder Rally, a 2-day biker circus in Harrisburg. Something between a demolition derby, an outlaw reunion, and a county fair from hell. Vendors sold whiskey-glazed ribs and chrome nipple clamps. The contests ranged from longest burnout to best-looking back tattoo on a woman over 50. It was Bo's scene. Mel's too, apparently. And they were taking the flathead. Now I want to be clear about something. That Harley isn't just a bike. It's my father's ghost. It's the smell of gasoline on a Sunday morning, the rattle of a homemade trailer hitch, the voice of a man who taught me how to clean a car before I learned to shave. And this shaved ape was going to roll it into a parking lot full of drunk reprobates, bragging like he built it with his own 2 hairy hands? No. I checked myself out of the hospital the next morning. The nurse said, "You're not ready," I said. "No one ever is." She helped me dress anyway. Back home, the place smelled like microwaved bacon and lemon-scented body spray. The sink was full of dishes. My gun safe was cracked open, empty except for a receipt for 2 boxes of hollow points, and a note in Mel's handwriting that said, "Don't be mad, love you." Bo was out. Mel was sleeping on the couch in a Hello Kitty tank top, her leg draped over the armrest like a cat in heat. She didn't even stir when I walked past her and into the garage. I locked the door behind me. It felt good to be home, even in the wreckage. The flathead sat on the lift like an old soldier waiting for orders. Its side mirror was cracked, and there was a fresh scrape on the tank. I didn't get mad. I got to work. I wasn't going to kill anyone. That wasn't the plan. What I did have was a prototype ignition kill switch I'd been toying with, something that could fry the battery from a distance. Originally, it was just a theft deterrent, but with a few tweaks, it could give Bo the scare of his life. A big enough electrical jolt to lock up the engine and throw him on his ass. A slap on the wrist, courtesy of modern redneck engineering. The beauty was in the subtlety. The system triggered only when the RPMs hit a certain threshold and only if a switch under the seat wasn't flipped. A double-check fail-safe. I built it with parts from my old ham radio kit and a lawnmower battery. Real Frankenstein stuff. I finished at 3 a.m., hands shaking from fatigue and adrenaline. Mel was still asleep. Bo returned around dawn, reeking of booze and gasoline. He stumbled into bed. I sat in the garage with a cup of black coffee and watched the sunrise bleed across the steel siding of my neighbor's tool shed. They left just after noon. Mel wore a leather jacket with fringe that fluttered like wings. Bo had the flathead growling like a lion in heat. I stood on the porch in a flannel shirt, waving like an idiot, looking like the world's most gullible husband. Inside, I waited. Not long. The call came 3 hours later. It wasn't Mel, it was dispatch. There'd been an explosion. Single motorcycle, Hershey Highway. 2 passengers, one confirmed dead at the scene, the other en route to critical care. Didn't say a word. Just nodded. Hung up. Took a breath. Then I laughed. Not because I was happy. Not because I hated them. I laughed because my homemade kill switch didn't even have explosives. The funny thing about revenge is, it always tastes different than you expect. I thought it'd be spicy, like cheap whiskey and righteous anger. But when I sat in that hospital hallway under a buzzing fluorescent light, waiting to see the woman who used to moan my name while stealing from my wallet, what I felt most of all was tired. Mel didn't die right away. Bo did. They said he was flung 20 yards, landed in a ditch like a sack of burned meat. The EMTs didn't even try CPR. One of them vomited at the scene. The other said he looked like a brisket left on the grill overnight. Mel was still breathing. Barely. When I walked into the burn unit, the nurse made me put on a gown, a mask, and gloves. She told me not to talk too loud, said the patient was nonverbal, unstable, and heavily sedated. Then she asked if I was the next of kin. I nodded. "Would you like to be the one to make the decision?" she asked, all business. "Which decision?" She didn't answer. Just pointed at a clipboard and left the room. The figure in the bed didn't look like Mel. Her face was wrapped in gauze, pink with seepage, mouth slightly open like she was trying to blow out birthday candles in her sleep. One eye was swollen shut. The other, empty, just wet and red. Her left leg was gone from the knee down. The monitor beeped, steady but slow. There were so many tubes it looked like someone was charging her like a phone. Machines hummed around us. Her skin was blistered. Her hair, used. To be bleach blonde and curled, was now scorched, patchy, and stuck to the pillow in clumps. She muttered something through cracked lips. I leaned closer. "Bo," she whispered. Not Jack. Not help. Not, "I'm sorry." Just that name. Bo. I stood there for a full minute. Then I reached over, took her limp, bandaged hand in my gloved one, and said, real soft, "He's gone." She didn't respond. When the nurse returned, I signed the form. They pulled the plug. That afternoon, it didn't feel like justice. It didn't even feel like closure. It just felt like Tuesday. That night, I sat in the garage again. The flathead was gone. What was left of it probably in a plastic bag somewhere. I had grease under my fingernails and blood on my conscience, even if I didn't understand how it had all gone sideways. Because here's the kicker. It wasn't my rig that blew them up. The system I installed? Still intact. I found the trigger. Receiver the next day when I went through the wreckage, escorted by a sheriff who knew my father. My device never fired. The battery was still connected. The wires were unburned. The cops confirmed it later. C4 military grade, remote detonation, professional job, which begged the question. Who the hell wanted them dead more than I did? I didn't have to wait long for the answer. Couple weeks later, I drove south. I had Mel's ashes in a box the size of a bread loaf. It rattled when I moved it. I didn't want to keep them. There wasn't a fireplace in the world I wanted her spirit hanging around in, but I figured I'd return her to someone who might have loved her once, or at least hated her less. She always talked about Alabama. Back home, she called it, though she never said what home really was. Through some calls and awkward digging, I got an address in Covington County, an old house at the edge of a dying pine forest where the mailbox was held up by duct tape and prayer. That's where I met Rachel. She answered the door in a faded Alabama, crimson-tied sweatshirt and sandals, pregnant belly wrapped in cotton, cigarette in hand. Her hair was red, real red, not the drugstore kind. Auburn. Her face had none of Mel's sparkle but all of her steel. "You're Jack?" she asked. I nodded. She let me in. The house smelled like coffee and vinegar. There was an old shotgun by the door and a dog with one eye sleeping under the table. "I heard about the accident," she said, sitting slow into a wooden chair with a crack in the leg. "Figured I'd be seeing someone eventually." I brought the remains. She looked at the box, didn't reach for it. "You can keep her," she said, "or toss her in the river. I don't care." We drank coffee in silence. She asked nothing. I offered less. But after an hour, she opened up. Bo was her brother. Big surprise. He'd been going downhill for years. Drugs, fights, a short prison stint for miscommunication with a firearm, whatever that means in Alabama. "Mel was poison," Rachel said plainly. Bo was already cracked, but she shattered him. I told her about Vegas, about the chapel, about the pigsty. She didn't blink, just took another sip and said, "You ever hear of Randy?" "No." "My older brother, Army man, quiet type, smarter than Bo but more dangerous." That's when I felt it. The silence between us thickened. Rachel stared out the window into the trees and said, "Randy and Mel were married once. She left him for Bo." She paused, and when she did, Randy stopped smiling. I stayed 3 days in that sagging Alabama house, longer than I planned, longer than I should have. Something about the place made my hands want to fix things. The porch had a tilt, so I jacked it up and added braces. The kitchen faucet leaked, so I found a gasket in the barn and swapped it out. I couldn't fix what Mel broke, but I could. Still tighten bolts, hammer nails, and make the world a little less crooked in the corners. Rachel didn't talk much. She moved like someone who used to be graceful but had learned to carry weight. Pregnancy, grief, maybe guilt too. She never asked for help, but she didn't stop me either. We drank coffee every morning and sweet tea in the evenings. No flirting, no games. Just two tired people pretending the past didn't still stink up the room like a dead raccoon in the chimney. Then one morning, he showed up. I was sanding a busted chair on the porch. The truck was old army green with a cracked windshield and Alabama tags. The man who stepped out had the kind of walk that tells you he's either military or prison-born. Slow, controlled, with that don't waste steps economy. Square jaw. Tighter haircut, gray at the temples. He looked like he could strangle a man with a shoelace and not lose sleep. "Jack," he said, holding out a hand. "Name's Randy." I shook it. His grip was dry and precise, like holding a vice lined with felt. "I heard you brought her back." "She's in the freezer," I said. I wasn't joking. It was too hot to keep her anywhere else. He smirked. "I appreciate that." We didn't talk much that first day. But later, over beer and leftover chili, the real story came out. Turns out, Randy had been stationed at Fort Campbell, served 2 tours, came home early when his sister's husband, Bo's best friend, died in a training exercise gone wrong. Rachel was pregnant then, too. Different kid. Didn't survive the birth. He'd come back to find Mel living in his trailer, sleeping with Bo, spending his checks like coupons. He didn't hit her, didn't scream. He just walked away. But he never really let go. "I watched from a distance," he said, sitting in the half-shadow of the porch light. "Followed her accounts, saw the wedding photos from Vegas, knew it wouldn't last. I asked about the explosion. He didn't flinch. It was mine." "Just like that. I found your kill switch," he added. "Impressive. Would have been a hell of a jolt. But I figured, if you were going to stop the train, why not just wreck the whole damn track?" I stared at him. No anger, no fear, just a strange, hollow respect. "You planted it after I finished the work?" He nodded. "Pigsty Bar. Saw you leave through the back. Watched Bo load her up. Swapped your battery rig for mine. Took maybe 2 minutes." "And you knew I'd get blamed?" "I knew you'd survive." The silence between us felt like molasses. Thick, heavy. "I didn't do it for you," he said. "But I wasn't going to let her ruin another man who didn't deserve it." "You could have warned me." "I did warn you," he said. "That night in the pigsty, I bumped into you at the jukebox." I blinked. The guy in the denim jacket. Beard-trimmed, quiet eyes. "You said, 'She's got teeth under that smile.'" "Yeah," Randy said. "You didn't listen." He drained his beer. Tossed the bottle into a rusted bucket with a dozen others. Then he stood. "You got your life back," he said. "Try not to waste it." He left that night. I never saw him again. But Rachel stayed. 2. Months later, she had the baby. Girl. 10 fingers, 10 toes, lungs like a tornado siren. She named her Melissa. I raised an eyebrow. Rachel shrugged. "It's not for her. It's for the piece I want to remember. We never said we were together. We just were." I fixed up the house. She brewed stronger coffee. The shotgun by the door stayed loaded, and the dog eventually accepted me. 3 years passed. The flathead never got rebuilt. I thought about it sometimes. But something in me said it belonged to the dead now. Instead, I bought a '68 El Camino and put in a new stereo. We took road trips to nowhere. Melissa called me Jack, not Dad, but that was fine. I wasn't there to replace, just to be. One night, sitting on the tailgate under a sky fat with stars, Rachel leaned her head on my shoulder and asked, "You still think about her?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Only when I hear fringe rustling in the wind." She laughed, the kind of laugh that doesn't try to hide anything, and just like that I knew I'd finally made it home.